I think the NFL's historically not been a fan of that, although they are allowing more celebrations. So, Lavar, do you like Odell Beckham?
I love Odell Beckham. And the reason why I love Odell Beckham is because he represents the evolution of specifically the football player. All right? You tend to look at historically basketball players. I'll keep it at basketball because not so much baseball, but
soccer stars and basketball players.
Soccer, right? The stardom is much different than it is for that of a football player, and it's because it's geared towards the shield and the logo of the team meaning more to the fan, presented by the league, than the person themselves.
Right.
And by the time you turned and looked and have figured out, I'm a football player that has made this football team's brand, the shield, the NFL shield, means so much more. My career's over, but I didn't really do anything to leverage my brand. And it's so many times, you know what's interesting is so many times we fail to be relevant unless we've done something wrong as players.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You're not relevant unless I've gotten a domestic situation.
Or blown a locker room up or something.
I bumped somebody in Las Vegas and knocked them over. And now I have all of these questions being stated about me. I respond back to a coach saying something about me, right? That's when we become relevant to the media or to the fans. It's almost like you have to become a villain before you can become a grade A superstar.
Outside of quarterback, by and large, you get famous in the NFL, either a play, a one-hand catch, or being a villain.
There you go.
I mean, by and large, outside of quarterback.
So I like Odell Beckham. He's a positive guy. If you've ever met him, very cordial, very personable person. He embraces the millennial spirit of what has really developed in pop culture, and he transcends the game of football. He really does, and I like that. I like it because it now creates a different narrative. You know, for so many years, the narrative has always been drawn and written by the media. If you ever notice, the media dictates. You know, I was painted as a dumb football player when my contract situation was messed up in Washington, Colin. I'm not dumb. I'm by far from
your agent screwed it up, I thought.
Well, see, and it's a whole deep conversation about it, right? We'll do it another time. We'll do it. All right. But the reality of it is that if you're listening to the media, my agent screwed it up. If you're listening to the media, something that Lavar did screwed it up. Then now all of a sudden, coming off of 3 Pro Bowls, now all of a sudden I can't learn a defensive playbook. I'm not good enough to play on the football field. I'm this. I'm disgruntled. I'm a malcontent. I love the game of football. I've always tried to be the best teammate that I could always be to my teammates in the locker room. Provided leadership, was probably a captain and didn't even need to be nominated as one, right? But the narrative that came out based upon the embarrassment of doing your star player the way that it panned out, and it happened in Washington, it was more important to paint a picture that justified what happened versus let's just fix it and move on from it.
Right.
You can't do that with an Odell Beckham.
They control it more.
You cannot control an Odell Beckham because his brand is just as relevant as the NFL shield or the Cleveland Browns logo or the New York Giants logo. It's just as relevant.
I want to talk about paying players. In the NBA, there are certain guys you have to pay, and multiple teams. You got to pay 2 or 3 stars in a team. In the NFL, it's interesting. New England will pay 1 cornerback, Stephon Gilmore. They won't pay 2. They generally will pay 1 offensive lineman, but last year their offensive linemen together make less or close to less as Trent Brown will make for the Raiders. They're very frugal. So the Jaguars have not been a winner since Jalen Ramsey showed up. They already pay one of their corners. He's got 2 years left. My takeaway on Jalen Ramsey is I could get a haul for Jalen Ramsey. I'd probably move him 2 years out. He's noisy, he's gifted, and we pay a corner. Would you pay him?
Who do you have to beat in the AFC South?
Andrew Luck.
Okay. What does Andrew Luck do very well?
Pass.
Okay. Pay that man his money.
Okay, so you think Andrew Luck determines it?
Well, okay, when you look at, and we had this discussion in the back, if you look at it from the perspective of each division presents its own different challenges, right?
Yeah, no question.
If you're in the AFC North, you got to prepare for a lot because you have quarterbacks that can throw, you have receivers, but it's a smash mouth type of division, right?
Sure,
so you got to be able to stop the run. So you may weight who you're going to use, who you're going to pay differently in the NFC or AFC North.
Hey, listen,
right?
when even Peyton Manning was on the Colts, Bill Polian told me once we got Peyton Manning, we knew we had to draft pass rushers because we would lead games in the second half. You would have to throw to beat us. So he goes, we got Peyton, and then we had to go find edge rushers like Dwight Freeney.
Sure.
So even on your own team, based on your strengths, I mean, like the Rams, by the way, same way. With their offense, McVay feels we're going to lead games. So I need good corners and I need Aaron Donald because teams will pass against us. So you're saying Andrew Luck and Deshaun Watson force you to go heavy on corners.
It's supply and demand, right? If the other schools or if the other teams are presenting the most danger by throwing the ball, then you have to load up to be able to defend that. And not to mention, here's another point that may have not come up yet, but we were talking about Fred Taylor the last time I was on the show.
Most
right?
underrated player in your life.
He's still not in the Hall of Fame. Why do you think that is? How many I think he played for the Patriots outside of the
Why
Jacksonville
isn't he in the Hall of Fame?
Because he played in Jacksonville. So maybe Jalen Ramsey is posturing. Pay me. It's not about you moving me. It's about me leaving. I get to choose in free agency, right?
That's pretty interesting.
Pay me to be the cornerback that you need me to be in Jacksonville.
I asked you privately last time, maybe it was public or private, I said, who was the best quarterback that got no credit? You said Mark Brunell. Who? And I said,
ironically enough,
Jacksonville. And I said, who was the best player? You're like, Fred Taylor. Two great players in
the same market.
But Jacksonville is like an old golfing community.
It is what old Duval, right? But
right.
It's not. It has not been a
great place for stars.
There you go. So if I'm Jalen Ramsey, pull up in a Brinks truck. Which, by the way, Tom Coughlin, I said, you'll enjoy this. I played for Coach Coughlin. Tom Coughlin, when he saw this, when somebody showed this to him in his office, all right, he probably had to send everybody out of his office because his skin and his muscle left his bones. He was standing in his office looking at that video screen, bare bones, like in the literal sense and figurative sense of bare bone. Coach Coughlin was sitting in that office and needed at least 10 to 15 minutes alone so that he could get his muscle back on his bones and get his skin back over top of the muscle and get his clothes back on top of the body and be able to continue with business as usual after that.
Yeah,
there's going to be repercussions to that.
Yeah. All right, Zeke, 2 years out. They got to pay Amari, Dak. I think they got to pay Byron Jones, the corner. They already paid DeMarcus Lawrence. They got to pay one of those linebackers in a year. Where's his leverage?
It's hard. It's hard to say he has strong leverage for two very major reasons. One being running backs does not hold the weight of being able to leverage a max contract these days. Okay,
it just doesn't.
You can take the money that you would have to pay to him and get two running backs and have running backs by committee. And I'd say get one that can run the ball, get one that can catch the ball out of the backfield, right? Yeah. Get one that can return kickoffs. Like look at what Coach Reed does, and he's done it forever. Yeah. With his running backs, multi-purpose guys,
no,
Sproles,
Andy Reid and Bill Belichick are multi-back guys.
There you
go. Philadelphia's in that.
So you take that. That's number one. And then number two is if you get into any trouble, the trouble is always addressed. It's always supported when it's convenient for the franchise to support you and work with you and work through it. But, oh, by the way, hey, Zeke, we're supporting you. We want to make sure you have all the opportunities that you need to be successful in life as a human being. But we're not going to take a risk on giving you all this cash because while we support you and we really believe in you as a person, we do believe that there are growth issues that need to take place before we can make that type of investment in you. If you look at Emmitt Smith has had contract deal situations, right? But Emmitt Smith handled things this way, Zeke. He handled it this way. He talked about it this way, Zeke. And that's why he was here for so long, right? Those things will ultimately come up in your face, all right? And he's done himself a disservice by getting into those situations, because now in a moment where you may have some leverage, because this team is not as prolific, it's not as dynamic when he's not in the game. We've seen it play out. Right. So the reality of it is outside of those two things, the obvious, we don't value the back as much as we used to. And even if we did, we just can't feel comfortable and confident giving you this scratch because you get into trouble.
Yeah, no, I was saying this earlier to Joy, is that running backs don't have leverage. Zeke is better than Melvin Gordon. But they both have interesting. Melvin may have more leverage because Melvin is respected in the room. It's a Super Bowl roster. And if you don't pay Melvin, how does it play?
Let's debate that one, Colin.
That's an interesting one.
Are they a Super Bowl roster?
Oh, I like their roster.
I spoke to Sean Merriman on Speak for Yourself last week.
You don't think the Chargers rosters?
Okay, think about this. Would you take the roster today of the San Diego Chargers versus that roster in, say, what year was that? Like 2004, maybe 5, maybe? That 2005 roster with Sean Merriman,
well, that
and Sean Phillips.
That had 10 Pro Bowlers.
You had LT in the backfield. Are you comparing Melvin Gordon to LT?
No, he's not nearly as good.
How many Super Bowls did they get?
Well, again,
how many Super Bowl appearances?
Stan Humphries got their one. I think their roster, I said this before.
What year was Stan Humphries?
A long time ago.
We're going back to Dan Fouts. Dan Fouts and those guys.
No, I think there's about 8 rosters in this league that are
caliber.
I think Chargers roster's really good.
It's good.
It's really good.
But I can't trust that their team.
Okay, that's different. You don't because Phillip makes some big mistakes. Anthony Lynn is young, hasn't won the big game. They struggle with Kansas City, Mahomes in the division. I get the argument.
It may be bigger than that, Colin. It really may be bigger than that. It's like comparing. You talked about New England and what Belichick brings to the table and what he does, right? They're not winning Super Bowls at this point based upon anything else other than it's a franchise. Name how many franchises have won the Super Bowl versus non-franchise football teams.
You mean you're talking about the well-run,
the Giants, the Steelers,
yeah.
the New England Patriots.
No, it is. It's fundamental. I mean,
right.
There's no question. It generally starts owner, GM, coach, quarterback. There's a hierarchy, and if you're not an A to an A- in the owner,
you're
GM,
not going to win.
I get it.
And I don't care how good your team is. I played on a team my rookie year. We had Bruce Smith, Marco Coleman, Dana Stubblefield, Big Daddy Wilkinson. That was our front line with Kennard Lang and Indy Kalu as backups to the front.
But you didn't have good stuff upstairs.
Well, I could have gone to the other side of the ball. We had Irvin Fryer. We had Michael Westbrook. We had Stephen Davis. We had Skip Hicks. We had Brad Johnson and Jeff George. Jeff George and Brad Johnson. You can put it in whatever order you want. And we still could not win games. We had Eric Metcalf, Adrian Morale. We had so much talent. We had Champ Bailey, Lavar Arrington, Darrell Green, and Deion Sanders all on the same team at the same time. And we did not win. We did not win a playoff game.
I know. No, this is why the NFL.
There are football teams and there are franchises. And the reason why San Diego will not win is because they are not a franchise. They are a football team.
Good stuff, Lavar Arrington. They are the L.A. Chargers now. You call them.
Yes, that's true.
Well, the weather's the same.
The L.A. Superchargers.
All right,
excuse me.
Lavar.
Thank you for the correction.
Good seeing you, bud.
It's always a
You
pleasure.
have good memory right there.
I mean, I'm like a geek, man.
Yeah, I get it. So am I. A couple of geeks
Especially about Western PA football, you know.
I get it.
We won't do that, though, today, right?
I mean,
we will not do that.
Woodland Hills got you guys most of the time.
No, never.
Joy with the news.
Never.
No.